The Carolina Panthers, as we already know, are in dire need of a quarterback. However, this offseason is probably the worst time ever to be in need of a quarterback because the quarterback market is pretty weak. Now, the Carolina Panthers have a couple of different avenues that they can take to acquire their starting quarterback for next season. They could either draft one in the upcoming 2022 NFL draft, they could sign one via free agency, or they could trade for one. Now, when you look at Carolina, they are in a really tough spot because a lot of Panthers fans are going to say, JT, we must trade for a quarterback. We must trade for Deshaun Watson or Russell Wilson. And for those of you guys who are proponent of Carolina drafting a quarterback, you got to ask yourself, is there a quarterback that is going to be able to win with what Carolina currently has in place? Because Carolina has a really good group of wide receivers, headlined by DJ Moore, one of the more underrated wide receivers in the league. However, if you draft a quarterback, what about the offensive line? Like, is the offensive line going to be good enough to give that young quarterback enough time to throw the football? Then, if you trade for a quarterback like Deshaun Watson, think about it this way, because I don't think not enough people are talking about this. Everybody keeps saying that Carolina needs to trade for a quarterback, right? And they need to trade for a star quarterback like Deshaun Watson. If you trade for Deshaun Watson, yes, you do get your franchise quarterback. Yes, you do solve your quarterback situation. If you trade for Deshaun Watson, you would never, ever, ever have to worry about the quarterback position again until Deshaun Watson decides to hang up the cleats. However, by trading for Deshaun Watson, you could be setting your franchise back. And a lot of you guys are probably going to say, JT, what do you mean setting your franchise back? Like, we have our star quarterback. If we trade for Deshaun Watson, we're good. Well, the quarterback position is good. What about the rest of the team? If you trade all your future first-round picks for Deshaun Watson, how are you going to be able to acquire a high-caliber offensive lineman? Your only option probably would be via the later rounds of the draft in free agency. And good luck trying to find a high caliber offensive tackle after the first round, because do you know how many elite offensive tackles are in the league right now? Probably only 2 or 3. Do you know how hard it is to even draft the above average offensive tackle in the draft? Really hard. And do you know how hard it is to draft even a starting caliber offensive tackle after round 1? Really hard. So the Panthers have a need at offensive tackle and a need at guard as well. So they have a lot of positions on the offensive line that need to be improved, and they're probably not going to be able to improve all those positions strictly by just signing guys via free agency. It's probably going to have to be a combination of both. They're probably going to have to sign a couple of guys, and they're probably going to have to draft a guy or two to help improve the offensive line. But if you trade all your assets for a guy like Deshaun Watson, you're going to be taking away capital that you could be using to improve the offensive line. And then what about the potential young players who you could be trading away? Like, some of the pieces that you could be trading away for Carolina could set you back. And then you can make your team even worse than what it was last season. So for the Panthers, I think that a quarterback who they should trade for is Gardner Minshew. And I know that's not going to be a popular name that Panthers fans are going to want to hear, but I think that Gardner Minshew would be a really good fit in Carolina for a couple of good reasons. The first one is that Gardner Minshew is a starting caliber quarterback. And if you're Carolina, you can definitely make it to the postseason with Gardner Minshew. And I understand that Gardner Minshew doesn't have a lot of elite physical traits that pop out to you. He doesn't have the strongest arm. He's not the greatest athlete. However, Gardner Minshew is somebody who has success playing for a not so good team that didn't have a lot of great talent around him. Like when Gardner Minshew was playing in Jacksonville, he was playing some pretty solid football. And, the only reason Jacksonville decided to get rid of him was because they had the opportunity to get a generational quarterback in Trevor Lawrence, who we thought at the time was a generational quarterback. And the Jacksonville Jaguars thought at the time they were upgrading from Gardner Minshew. So you look at Gardner Minshew having experience playing with a bad team and having success playing with a bad team is impressive. So you have a quarterback in Gardner Minshew who can have success despite not having a lot of great pieces around him. That's a plus, because going to Carolina, you're not going to be put in an ideal situation. Like, you're going to be put in a situation where the offensive line still might be in the state of influx, okay? However, Gardner Minshew is going to be able to get the ball to DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson. And then on top of that, he probably will love having a guy like Christian McCaffrey. And you want to know what is the plus of getting a guy like Gardner Minshew? Not only do you have a quarterback who potentially could get you to the postseason, but you also are going to be able to get Gardner Minshew for dirt cheap. Do you know what you could probably get Gardner Minshew for? The Eagles will probably give up Gardner Minshew for a third-round pick. And if Carolina is able to get Gardner Minshew for a third-round pick, that's a steal. Now, I don't want to hear any of you guys talk about some, man, JT, we already tried, to trade for a quarterback for cheap with Sam Darnold. It didn't work out. Don't you dare, don't you ever utter out your mouth that Sam Darnold and Gardner Minshew are similar quarterbacks, because they're not. Because Gardner Minshew is miles ahead of Sam Darnold. And he was miles ahead of Sam Darnold his rookie season. You got to remember that Sam Darnold was a first-round pick. Gardner Minshew was like a late-round selection. So for the Carolina Panthers, you can get Gardner Minshew for dirt cheap, for pretty much a third-round pick. And you can still have all of your assets. You don't have to give up no good young players to get Gardner Minshew. You don't have to give up no high-caliber draft picks. All you have to do is give up a mid-round selection, and you get Gardner Minshew. And then you can use those other draft picks to improve your team. Then you don't have to sign the quarterback in free agency. So the money that you would use to sign the quarterback in free agency, you could use to sign, offensive linemen to improve the offensive line and to improve other areas of your team. So by trading Gardner Minshew, you get a very good deal. You don't break the bank. Okay, you don't have to give up a lot of assets. And on top of that, you have a guy in Gardner Minshew who can win with less. So I think trading for Gardner Minshew would be a really good idea for Carolina. Because for Carolina fans, let's just be honest, even if you do get Deshaun Watson, how do you know that Deshaun Watson is going to be able to play next season? Okay, and when it comes to getting Russell Wilson, we don't really know for sure if Russell Wilson wants out of Seattle, because we heard these similar rumors come up last season or last offseason, and Russell Wilson didn't get traded. So for the Carolina Panthers, especially Matt Rule, with the situation that he's in, he can't really afford to be giving up all these assets to get his quarterback and then his team and other areas not be that improved. Because yes, quarterback is one of the most, if not the most important position in football. However, there are other areas of the team that make things go. And too many people are caught in this whole Joe Burrow effect. Everybody keeps thinking when you have a great quarterback, you can do anything, go anywhere. People forget that Joe Burrow had, some talented wide receivers to throw the football to. He had a pretty good defense as well. But his offensive line was bad. However, by circumstances, Cincinnati was able to overcome it. So just because Joe Burrow was able to overcome certain limitations in Cincinnati doesn't mean that every quarterback is going to be able to overcome, because every quarterback is different. Not everybody is Joe Burrow. Not everybody is Justin Herbert. Those are outliers. You still have to put your quarterback in a situation to succeed. Didn't Deshaun Watson go 4-12 his last season starting for the Houston Texans? Shouldn't that just be... I'm just going to leave that there. Deshaun Watson, as great as Deshaun Watson is, went 4-12 his last season in Houston because he had one of the worst rosters in the league. So you still do need to have a little bit of a roster to be able to win. And for Carolina, that offensive line has to be improved. So if you get Gardner Minshew, you have a guy who can come in, win. He should play at a pretty good level because it's not like Gardner Minshew was trash or anything like that. Like, Gardner Minshew was a really good starter. As a matter of fact, coming out of his draft class, he probably is the second best quarterback behind Kyler Murray. So Gardner Minshew going to Carolina could work out. And I could see it working out because, like, Gardner Minshew, although he doesn't have all the great physical traits, like he knows the game, he's pretty good when it comes to reading coverages. And yes, he does have some physical limitations, but you can work out those physical limitations. You can make up for having a lack of arm strength by having good anticipation, being accurate, getting the ball out on time. So with Gardner Minshew, you also have somebody who's smart with the football. He's not going to turn the football over. And the narrative that Gardner Minshew isn't going to lose you games, but he's not going to win you games is false, because there's been several times when Gardner Minshew has been able to do more with less. Like, if Gardner Minshew was able to win games in Jacksonville, imagine what he can do in Carolina with a better situation than what he ever had in Jacksonville. And I know this kind of is starting to take a similar tone to when people were trying to sell Carolina Panthers fans on Sam Darnold when they initially traded for him. But Gardner Minshew is not even close to being in the same realm of Sam Darnold. Like, Gardner Minshew is a legitimate starter. You get what I'm saying? Like, there are probably other teams that could be starting Gardner Minshew. Like, as a Steelers fan, I would have no problem if Pittsburgh traded for Gardner Minshew. I would love Gardner Minshew as a Pittsburgh Steeler. Like, all Gardner Minshew needs is the keys. This dude was balling with Jacksonville, the Jacksonville Jaguars. So if he's balling with the Jacksonville Jaguars, I'm pretty sure he can ball out with the Carolina Panthers. Not only that, but he balled out in one of the games that he had to start this past season for Philadelphia when Jalen Hurts was unable to play. So, I mean, like, Gardner Minshew has proven time in and time out that he can get the job done as a starting quarterback. And even if he doesn't work out in Carolina, he isn't going to hit the fan as bad as Sam Darnold did or Cam Newton. I can guarantee you that. So, like, if you say, okay, JT, what if Gardner Minshew ends up pooping the bed like what Sam Darnold did? Well, the low with Gardner Minshew isn't going to be as bad as the lows with Sam Darnold. So, with Gardner Minshew, you get somebody who has experience with a bad team, or a team with not a great offensive line, or a team with a lack of talent. So you also have somebody who is going to be good when it comes to getting the ball out. He's not going to make a lot of bad decisions with the football. Like, Gardner Minshew would be a really big pickup for Carolina. And I think that Gardner Minshew is an underrated quarterback domino in the quarterback market that not a lot of people are talking about and not a lot of people are giving a chance. But you guys let me know what you guys think. Should the Carolina Panthers trade for Gardner Minshew? Let me know down in the comment section down below. If you are watching this on YouTube, make sure that you check out the JT Sports Podcast. Every video that's uploaded on the channel is available in audio format on every single podcasting service. Spotify Podcast, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts from, the JT Sports Podcast is available. All you got to do is go to any podcasting service that you use, type in the JT Sports Podcast, it should pop up. Or you can click the link down in the description down below, and it will take you to the Apple and Spotify podcast feeds. Make sure that you guys go ahead, leave the JT Sports Podcast a 5-star review. Also, make sure that you subscribe to the channel. Make sure that you like the video. And I appreciate you guys for listening to another episode of the JT Sports Podcast.